Welcome back to the deep dive. Today, we're heading to Springfield, home of The Simpsons,
The Simpsons.
to explore this thing that keeps popping up everywhere, the show's ability to predict the future. You guys sent us a ton of articles and even some video transcripts breaking down some really crazy examples.
It really is fascinating how this cartoon family somehow seems to foreshadow real-world events, and with surprising accuracy, too. I mean, we've got decades worth of episodes to go through, so...
Let's do it. I'm thinking we start with one that's got me totally stumped. Remember the Simpsons movie back in 2007?
Yeah.
Springfield gets stuck under this giant dome,
Yeah.
all because of, wait for it, an environmental catastrophe.
Right. And what's interesting is the stuff you sent actually highlights how scientists today in 2024 are really worried about the possibility of smaller environmental disasters kind of snowballing into a massive crisis.
So maybe a giant dome over a city is a bit far-fetched.
Yeah.
But that whole idea about what happens when we ignore the environment, well, that's hitting pretty close to home these days, don't you think?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And that's where the Simpsons satire shines. They take a complex issue, like this one, inject some humor. And suddenly, it's not just easy to understand, but it makes you think.
It's like they sneak in these truths among all the jokes.
Yeah.
And sometimes those truths turn out to be more accurate than anyone could have imagined.
Exactly. Like that episode Paths of Glory from 2015, remember? Lisa builds a solar-powered car.
Oh, yeah.
And then...
Gets sabotaged.
Sabotaged. The source material you sent connects this to the real-world resistance to electric vehicles and renewable energy.
You mean like how some oil companies are lobbying to slow down the shift to greener tech? It's kind of creepy how that episode reflects what's happening in the real world.
Right. It definitely makes you wonder about who benefits from keeping things the way they are and how far those in power will go to protect their interests. The Simpsons, in their own way, were pointing this out years before it became a major talking point.
Now, you mentioned the writers being super observant.
Yep.
But this next one is hard to explain away with just observation. Lisa the Skeptic, from way back in 1994, correctly predicted Bengt Holmstrom winning the Nobel Prize in economics, a full 20 years before it actually happened.
Now, that is remarkable, that level of detail.
Mm-hmm.
It makes you wonder if the writers were tapping into something deeper, a subconscious understanding of how things might play out.
Okay, so maybe they're not time travelers.
Right.
But they're definitely onto something. Speaking of the future, The Simpsons also touched on space colonization, the Martian Chronicles from 2016.
Yes.
Lisa and Marge end up living on Mars 35 years in the future.
And of course, we can't forget what's happening in the real world. Elon Musk's SpaceX, aiming for Mars colonization. Not too far off in the future either.
It's wild how they took this idea that used to be a pure science fiction and made it part of the conversation. And here we are, just a few years away from possibly seeing humans on Mars.
It really makes you think, does science fiction inspire real-world innovation? Or are the Simpsons simply tapping into this collective desire for what's beyond our planet? Maybe it's a bit of both.
You know what? Maybe the Simpsons writers are just really good at picking up on those underlying desires and anxieties that we all have, even if we don't always talk about them.
It's an interesting thought. Remember Treehouse of Horror V from 1994? The episode with the rogue AI robot causing all that chaos?
Uh-huh.
Fast forward to 2024, and discussions about AI safety and ethics are more relevant than ever.
It's almost like those crazy storylines from The Simpsons. They're like a mirror, reflecting our deepest fears and aspirations. And sometimes those reflections turn out to be eerily accurate.
Exactly. They take these anxieties, package them with humor, and make us confront them in a way that we wouldn't if it was just a news report or a scientific study.
All right, get ready for this one. Bart to the Future. The episode from 2000 shows Lisa as president dealing with the aftermath of a Trump presidency, implying he served a second term. Now, I know we said no politics, but you can't deny the timing of this one.
It's quite a coincidence, to say the least. Especially with Trump announcing he's running again in 2024.
Right, and remember the Simpsons guy from 2014? Greece was in total financial distress, foreshadowing their actual economic crisis. It's these crazy parallels that keep people fascinated with The Simpsons predictions. But instead of focusing on if they actually have a crystal ball, I think the bigger question is, why are we so drawn to this idea?
That's a great question. Why do we find it so compelling when fiction seems to blend with reality? I guess that's something we can explore in part 2 of our deep dive.
Absolutely. Stay tuned, folks.
Yeah, it really is something to think about. Maybe it has to do with wanting things to make sense, In a world that often feels pretty chaotic, finding patterns, even in something like a cartoon, can be comforting.
Right. Like we want to believe there's some order to it all, even if it's just for laughs.
Exactly. And The Simpsons, with its mix of humor and social commentary, it's the perfect place for this kind of playful exploration of the future.
Speaking of playful exploration, what about those flying cars from Itchy and Scratchy Land back in 1992? They seemed so impossible back then, but now you've got companies like Samsung Sky actually trying to make flying sports cars a reality as early as 2025.
It's amazing how what used to be pure science fiction is becoming more and more real. And The Simpsons often present these futuristic ideas in such a fun, lighthearted way. It makes it even more surprising when they actually happen.
It's like they're planting these seeds in our minds, making us believe that even the craziest ideas could actually come true, like holographic Homer in Homer the Great from 1995.
Right.
And now we have mixed reality headsets like Microsoft HoloLens.
Another idea that seemed absurd at the time. And now here we are, on the verge of having holographic technology in our daily lives. The Simpsons weren't just predicting the future, they were shaping it, expanding our idea of what's possible.
Okay, this one from 2007, Burns and the Bees, is just wild. It showed a Barbie movie poster way before the movie came out in 2024, but it also had a storyline about Trump getting arrested, which will...
Yeah. A pretty uncanny coincidence, given what's been happening. While it might be tempting to say these are just lucky guesses, I think it's more about the writers being able to tap into the cultural zeitgeist, to see those underlying trends that are shaping society, even if they haven't fully emerged yet.
So they're not necessarily seeing the future, but they're picking up on these little hints that point to what might be coming.
Exactly. They're like cultural seismographs, detecting the tremors of change before they become full-blown events.
I like that. And it explains why some of the most accurate predictions aren't about the huge headline-grabbing things, but the smaller, seemingly insignificant details, like in Lisa the Beauty Queen from 1994.
Oh, yeah.
It had this early touchscreen device that messed up messages, much like our autocorrect struggles today.
It's true. Those little details, often played for laughs, show a deep understanding of how people behave and how we use technology. It's like the writers are saying, hey, we see you. We get how you think. Yeah. We know where this is going.
It makes you wonder, what other hidden gems are tucked away in those 700-plus episodes of The Simpsons? What other random jokes or storylines might end up foreshadowing real things in the years to come?
It's like a treasure chest of potential predictions, just waiting to be discovered. Maybe we as viewers have a part to play in figuring those messages out, connecting the dots between Springfield and the real world.
I love that. It's like a giant puzzle we're all trying to solve together. Maybe that's part of the fun. The feeling of being in on the joke, of trying to decode the hidden messages.
Maybe. Or maybe it's just the joy of seeing fiction and reality collide in these unexpected and often funny ways.
It definitely changes how you look at things, doesn't it? Like you start to wonder if there's a Simpsons episode out there that predicted this very conversation we're having right now.
Yeah, that would be something.
So we've talked about how The Simpsons have predicted all sorts of things, from politics to technology, often with a good dose of satire and absurdity.
We've looked at how satire can shape how we see the future, and how the writers' sharp observations and ability to capture the zeitgeist might explain their uncanny accuracy.
But there's one prediction we haven't touched on yet, and it might be the key to understanding why The Simpsons are so popular.
Oh, and what prediction is that?
The prediction that The Simpsons itself would become this huge cultural phenomenon, something that connects with generations of viewers, a show that would still be relevant and resonate decades after it started.
Yes. The ultimate meta prediction.
And maybe that's the real reason why we're so fascinated with their predictions. It's not just about how accurate they are. It's about the connection, the shared experience of watching this show that somehow manages to reflect our lives, our hopes, our fears, our dreams.
A mirror that shows not just what is, but what could be.
That's a great way to put it. And that wraps up part 2 of our deep dive into The Simpsons predictions. Stay tuned for part 3. Where we'll look at some of the funnier, more heartwarming predictions that remind us that even in a world that often feels uncertain, there's always room for laughter, love, and maybe a donut or two. And we're back for the final part of our deep dive into The Simpsons' wild predictions. We've gone through some pretty heavy stuff so far, haven't we?
We have. From worries about the environment to space travel, and all with that classic Simpsons blend of humor and insight. Makes you wonder if they had some secret peek into the future.
Right. But it's not all doom and gloom and flying cars. The Simpsons have also hit on some really heartwarming and funny things, you know? The kind that remind us life can be full of surprises and laughter, even with all the uncertainty.
Oh, definitely. Remember that Boy Meets Girl episode from way back in 2010?
Oh, yeah.
Homer and Marge snagged the gold medal in curling at the Olympics, with Sweden getting silver.
And guess what? That's exactly how it went down at the 2018 Winter Olympics. Talk about a spot-on prediction. It really shows you that the Simpsons aren't just brilliant with their social commentary. They're masters at finding humor in the most unexpected places.
Couldn't agree more. They remind us that even when things feel crazy and complicated, there's always room for a good laugh. Those moments of shared joy and absurdity that make life worth living.
And speaking of absurdity, that episode, Itchy and Scratchy and Marge from 1992 Springfield, goes nuts over censoring Michelangelo's David because of, well, you know.
The whole art and censorship debate, a classic. It's amazing how The Simpsons tackled such a touchy subject. With their usual wit and satire, they really highlighted how ridiculous it is to try and impose today's morals on art that stood the test of time.
And the funny thing is, that debate is still going strong today, with controversies popping up over everything from old paintings to modern sculptures.
It just goes to show how good The Simpsons are at getting to the heart of human dilemmas. Those questions about freedom of expression, societal norms, the power of art. Things that challenge and provoke us, even today.
They make us think, they make us laugh, and that, hey, sometimes they even make us believe that maybe, just maybe, curling could become the biggest sport in the world.
Oh, that would be a sight. But on a serious note, as we close out our look at The Simpsons' amazing predictions, what do you find most fascinating about this whole phenomenon?
You know, what really stands out to me is how the Simpsons have managed to weave together humor, social commentary, and this deep understanding of what makes us human. They've created a show that's not just entertaining, but also incredibly insightful.
It's true. It's like this alternate universe that mirrors our own, with all its flaws and everything, but they add in a healthy dose of laughter and a touch of hope.
And maybe that's the biggest lesson we can take away from the Simpsons' predictions. Even when the world feels unpredictable and crazy, there's always a reason to smile, a reason to believe in the power of human ingenuity, and a reason to keep watching The Simpsons, just in case they drop another clue about what the future holds.
I like that. So long, Springfield.
And that's a wrap on our deep dive into The Simpsons' incredible predictions. Thanks for joining us. And remember, whether you're facing a real-life problem or just need a good laugh, there's probably a Simpsons episode out there that can offer some advice, some humor, or maybe even a glimpse into what's to come. Until next time, stay curious, keep exploring, and don't forget to do